No sun.
That's right.
Definitely
And today
not.
there was no sun.
No.
All right.
Yesterday there was, today not so much.
I'd like to welcome everybody as our attendees are rolling in to this February CBEC meeting. Thanks everybody for taking your time to join us today. There we go. As you probably know, CBEC is a nonprofit organization. We're devoted to pushing the furtherance of building science, building knowledge, just trying to make better buildings for people to live, work, and play in. This is all possible through the efforts of our board. We have a great set of people from throughout the industry in many different roles, architects and engineers and material suppliers, manufacturers, and they get the job done. Announcements, our March meeting will be on the 18th, is a midday meeting from 11 to 1. And the topic will be window sill pan flashings, are liquid membranes suitable? And it will be presented by Michael Wilkinson from RDH. And our April meeting will be on tax day, the 15th, and it's an evening meeting. And the topic is to be announced. A couple other efforts that CBEC has. We do 2 annual $2,000 scholarships. Applications are live now at our website. If you know somebody, a student who's in any really building associated programs, we'd love to have them apply and to be able to help them out with their studies. Applications are only accepted through February 28th. If you have any questions about that, check out the website or contact Bill Thordarson with Bain and Associates, who is our student outreach chair. We are receiving updates on our first research grant recipient, Teresa at the UW, and her team are pushing through developing some new parametric tools. And we will be reopening applications for the research grant in the fall as well. So if you have some ideas that you're interested in researching and some funds from CBEC could help you out, please have a look at that program as well. We're looking forward to continuing that and to giving back a bit more to the community. Other events in the area, CSI Puget Sound will have a meeting in their education series on the 23rd, and CSI Portland is doing a Jetty Town Hall also on the 23rd. Now I'd like to hand it over to Craig Schumann with Master Builders Solution. Craig is our sponsor for this month's meeting, and Craig, feel free to take it away.
All right, thank you. Let me get to my screen here. Yeah, let's see here. Bear with me a second while I figure my technology out again. All right, let's get to beginning and working with 2 screens here, so I'm here. Let me escape out of that. I'm sorry, I thought we had this all figured out before. Let's view shit.
Never quite goes as planned.
Yeah, right. You know.
You always pick the
Alrighty.
wrong screen first.
Yeah, of course I did. Let me try to. All right. No, that's not it. Let me start over again. Holy cow, I'm sorry, guys. I thought I had this all set up. It's just not showing up when I, let's see here. Try this again.
We've all been there, so not to fear.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
Yeah,
anything-
right.
Craig, do you want me to throw it up on this end? I can.
I'm going to give it one more shot here. Okay.
You can do it.
Yay.
See?
Perfect.
Yeah, there we go.
You
All
got
right.
it.
Yeah, what do you know? Big victory here, right? So, hey, thanks a lot for the opportunity to chat with you all tonight for a couple of minutes. My name's Craig Schumann. I'm the Territory Sales Manager for Master Builder Solutions in the Northwest. Been in this position for 10 plus years now. We've had a lot of changes, and a few updates I wanted to share with you are, let me go to my next slide here. Okay, again, the screen sharing thing. First and foremost, we're no longer a part of BASF. BASF sold off our entire construction chemicals division, and we are now part of MBCC Group, touching with all these other global brands here that you see. The two brands I deal with here in North America would be Master Builder Solutions and the Watson Bowman Acme Expansion Joint Systems. That leads us to a lot of updated branding. So all of the old BASF.com email addresses have been deactivated. So if you try to get a hold of any of us on that, it's going to come back undeliverable. So the new syntax is the @mbcc-group.com. So, and also with the brand change comes change in specifications and names and so on. I know how everybody loves writing specifications, but we're there to help. So any of the old product names we need to change, thankfully with the brand change now, there's no name changes again. We went through that a number of years ago. So at any rate, the old branding to the new branding we can help with, and then we also have guide specs available. So just reach out to me if that would be helpful to you. Now, just a quick overview of the variety of products and systems. I know many of you worked with us in the past, so you kind of know what you're dealing with here, but anything from air barrier to concrete repair to corrosion mitigation, deck membranes, grouts, joint sealants, waterproofing, and so on. And then, of course, that ties right directly into the building envelope and structural systems for the expansion joint assemblies as well. So any questions on the architectural joints, structural joints for any of these applications, yeah, please feel to reach out, get you going in the right direction there. Couple updates on our traffic coatings. We're one of the few manufacturers that has coatings that encompass the polyurethane, the epoxy, and MMA chemistries. As a manufacturer of all these different products, we kind of have the unique capability to create some defined hybrid systems that incorporate a variety of these chemistries, anything from a one-part and a two-part chemistry of a polyurethane together to create a system, combining polyurethanes and epoxies, and as well as combining MMAs with polyurethane. So something new too that we've been doing more and more recently is we're offering 10-year warranties for pedestrian and vehicular applications. So most important thing there is let's define the system that's going to best meet the need, and then we'll attach the appropriate warranty to it. So it's just about a matter of working together to find the best value for the system, for the need, and so on. A lot of you are familiar with our Master Seal NP150. This has been on our kind of our go-to building envelope hybrid joint sealant, and it's been identified as a joint sealant for years. Now we're promoting this product also more of a 6-in-1 type of sealant, so which can be used as a liquid flashing for air barrier systems, window flange setting bed, a window flange seal, seal transition to the building wrap, even to low surface energy substrates, then an air seal on the interior, and then of course a conventional joint sealant on the exterior like we normally have done. And then we're still doing the 10-year standard warranties for the common building envelope applications. And something new this year too, we are offering a 20-year warranty on the NP150 for window and door applications. So anybody has any some information on that, let me know. And need some more specifics or a project, happy to help there. Okay, continuing education. It's been a big thing for us this year, making access to education a lot easier for everybody. So here is a link to our Master Builder Solutions learning portal to sign up, which will give you access to tech talks that we recorded over the past year or so, a variety of other industry topics, and then a bunch of AIA presentations, which you can go in and learn at your own pace. We're also still doing lunch and learn. So they're all pretty much virtual right now. So if you have a topic you want to discuss, definitely reach out to me and we can coordinate setting up lunch and learn. And then we're still proceeding with our applicator training programs, virtual and hands-on in the field too. So we can still do that. Additional resources for you. On the job training. So if anybody needs to understand how a product is applied, mixed and applied in the field, with these videos are readily available to everybody. Product selector guides, really cool digital rendering tool we just launched not too long ago. It's fantastic for our architectural coding systems. And then here's a link for some of our other tools and resources, design details, tech bulletins, and so on. Local contacts. You have my contact info right there. I'll also have my couple of colleagues of mine, Chris Hayes, who covers pretty much the same area that I do, Bruce Jackson down in Oregon, and then you have access to our technical support team. So we've got a lot of resources available to you. Any questions, just feel free to reach out. So now, earlier today, it was brought to my attention that today is National Drink Wine Day. And I figured, well, who am I to argue with that, right? So at this point, I'd like to wish you all a cheers and to an amazing 2021. Thank you. There. All righty.
Great, thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Current slide. All right, great. So our topic for today's CVEC meeting is a new paradigm for building enclosure delivery, performance, and durability. And it's presented as a panel discussion. So Ujval will be our moderator. Cory Robbins, Christopher Dixon, and Catherine Jones will be our panel. And at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Ujval to introduce himself, and then the rest of the panelists can introduce themselves and give us a little background information, and we'll get going. We are recording this presentation with the hopes to present it on YouTube at a later date. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A forum, and we'll keep an eye on that and present those to the panelists and the moderator as they come in to keep the discussion going. And with that, I will hand it off.
Thanks, Nathan. Appreciate it. We're really glad to be here. I'm delighted that my colleagues forgot to mention to me that I was to act as a moderator. So this is quite an interesting, I'm glad they did that, but it'll be fine. I'm Ujval Vyas. I've spent a lot of time in, did you send out bios for all of us, Nathan? I think you already did. So there's no point in really going over the details of that kind of stuff.
He wanted us to introduce ourselves very quickly in an elevator 30-second pitch.
30-second. Okay. Well, so very quickly, as I said, I've been in AEC sort of world for a long time. I used to be a professor of architecture, and then I went on to and get a degree in law, and I was a construction attorney for quite some time, but I've been consulting in this area for probably well over a decade now. And I know some of the people who are attending, which is kind of nice. And as I said, Seattle is one of my favorite cities. I've been working on issues related to this for quite some time with Cory and with Chris and with Katie and others. And so it's nice to get a chance to discuss it in public and get real feedback from you guys as to, you know, feel free. We're all big boys. If you criticize us, we won't melt. So with that, I'll toss it off to Cory and then the other folks.
Yeah, I'm going to let Chris introduce himself last because he's going to be the first to start the presentation. So my name is Cory Robbins. I'm Director of Business Development for EDA Contractors. We are a installing subcontractor out of Philadelphia who does exterior enclosure. That is our MO. That's our niche. We work in commercial, institutional, in that arena, if you will. And, you know, we're pretty successful, about 20 years in, and excited to be here. Just like, and we got to give a shout out to Craig for having us drink some wine. That was pretty cool. I guess Katie, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Katie Jones. I am a construction attorney with the law firm of O'Hagan Meyer. I don't think we have an office in Seattle, but have, I believe, 4 offices in California. So somewhat close, although not too close. I've been practicing law for a little over 20 years. And like I said earlier, my practice focuses on construction. I've routinely represented owners, developers, GCs, construction managers, and do a lot of architects and engineers defense. Then I'll kick it over.
Great. My name is Chris Dixon. I think I know many of you on the call. I am currently employed at Morrison Hershfield as a facade specialist. I work with Nathan and also Amanda. We're in the same office. I'm in the facade engineering group. Amanda and Nathan are in the building science services group, but we all work in the same office and we all work closely together. I came to enclosure consultancy by way of being a registered architect and a specifier for most of my career, but always had a real interest in building enclosure, sort of educating myself along the way as an architect and a specifier, and made the jump to a facade specialist at Morrison Hershfield about 2 years ago now, and have really been enjoying that, and have been learning a lot, filling in a lot of gaps that I had as working only as an architect and a specifier, and also through this got together with Ujval, Cory, and now Katie, and we have been noodling on this for quite a while now, and we think we've got a really interesting and exciting new way to look at and approach how we deliver the building enclosure. And so I'm going to go through very quickly my bit of this, which is more eye candy than anything else, and probably a lot of repeat information for almost everyone on the call.
You have the control, so you can take over whenever you're ready.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay. So these statistics are known to all of us on the call, I would guess. And there are multiple sources, multiple studies and reports that talk about construction costs and what percentage of those are related to, in this case, water intrusion. 40% is the number that you're going to see reported mostly from, again, multiple sources. Having a bit of a lag here, Cory, so bear with me as I get through this. Also, many people have seen these statistics. 70% of all construction litigation comes from water intrusion through the enclosure, and 60 to 70% of all envelope failures are attributed to improper installations. So I'm going to very quickly go over the 4 building enclosure control layers that we all deal with as consultants, architects, owners, product representatives on a daily basis. That's what we do. We all know that the 4 control layers are water, air, thermal, and vapor diffusion. And I thought it would be interesting to look at this building. This is a cross section of the Bauhaus in Dessau, Germany. And I think for many people, this symbolizes the beginnings of modern architecture and the modern building. Devoid of ornamentation, form follows function. This is sort of the beginnings of what we see still today for many of the buildings that we all work on. If this building were to be built today in its current form, these are the things that we all as professionals would have to deal with. We have to deal with the water control layer at below grade, at balconies, at walls, at parapets, opaque walls, glazing, roofing, and waterproofing. And today we also have to deal with air. And air follows a line around the building, as we all know. Sometimes it becomes a water control layer. Sometimes it is a separate layer. Thermal as well, we have to deal with quite a bit, more and more as energy codes get more and more stringent. And those are, again, going around the entire enclosure, in the roof, in the walls, and sometimes below grade. And the last control layer that we have to deal with is vapor diffusion. And this little diagram sort of illustrates all of the areas that are of paramount importance to us as practitioners, because these are the problem areas that end up leaking or causing us some sort of problem, whether that be water from the outside in the form of liquid water or water from the inside in the form of condensation. So I hope that was a good little illustration of how, when that building was built in the early 1900s, things were a lot simpler than that. Things are much, much more complicated today. And it is just becoming ever more complicated for us. We have to deal with not only those 4 control layers, but a bunch of other things on every single project, including design delegation. Oftentimes, portions of buildings are delegated to other design professionals that form a part of the design team. It's not anymore the case that the architect is the leader of the entire design. A lot of that now is delegated. Secondary structural attachments. A lot of interesting questions come up on some projects as to who is responsible for making sure that this enclosure assembly or component is attached to the building. Is it the structural engineer? Is it the fabricator? Is it the contractor? Who is that? Air barrier testing requirements. We're well aware of this in Washington State and Seattle. I think we probably are leading the charge in that in the United States. This is a requirement for every building that we do in the state of Washington. It's something that we are having to also deal with. Many other jurisdictions do not yet have to deal with this, but I believe that it's just a matter of time before the entire United States has to deal with this. Thermal bridging. This is becoming something that's more and more important as energy codes are tightened. ASHRAE is working on an amendment right now that will require thermal bridging to be addressed. The city of Seattle has started to address this in their energy code as well. Again, we're kind of the front runners with this in this area. But as soon as ASHRAE adopts that amendment, this will become something that becomes something as a national issue, not just now jurisdictional. Building codes. So many things in the building codes in the last 10 to 15 years have been put in that create additional issues for us as practitioners who deal with this on a daily basis. Fire-related issues, weather barrier-related issues. There are things that are actually named now in the building code that weren't named prior to that are causing us to be ever more diligent about knowing and needing to resolve issues from the building code. And then, of course, energy codes becoming more and more stringent. Every single pass, we have more to deal with. Tightening of those energy codes, making it more difficult for us to find solutions to meet that minimum prescriptive requirement. And again, the city of Seattle, really a forerunner in this. And new energy codes are now being adopted in the state of Washington and the city of Seattle, which will make things even more difficult for us yet again. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Cory, who's going to sort of talk about his part of this as a fabricator of these systems in these buildings. Cory, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. There was also a question about whether or not this will be recorded and then shown. And yeah, as far as we know, Nathan said he's going to do his best to record this and put it on YouTube later. Okay, so, Chris says solving for all. Okay, close. Cory's turn. All right, so, so this is from our perspective. So we're a contractor, we're an installer of the exterior envelope. We started as roofing, kept expanding. When that rain screen train came across the Atlantic, we dove in front of it, luckily. And we just basically, over the last 15 years, realized this giant loophole in rain screen material warranties. So you all know it, but not every architect does. So forgive me for, re-educating anybody who already knows this. But when it comes to the air vapor barrier warranty, as soon as that thing is punctured, it's over. It's on the workmanship at that point. And then the cladding material warranty is not designed to keep track of the water. So if there is a leak in a rain screen after the completion date, it basically falls on one of the installers and it turns into a very expensive, litigious, and aggressive blame game. And we got into this several occasions. Even when we were either doing one or the other, we always were getting sucked in because we were just a very large company, and we were just being brought in a lot. So our realization of the fact that we were always on the hook really led us to this idea of the EDA envelope, or the envelope warranty. And what our solution was, which is just to lean into the risk. So we decided that if we were going to be awarded the air vapor barrier and the cladding, we would provide a 10-year installer's warranty. That would be the safety net to catch those odd leaks that the material warranties do not cover. And for us, it was a very simple numbers game, in the sense that we thought we were going to be blamed anyway, and it's cheaper or more cost effective for EDA as a company financially to fix the problem. Let's say it costs $40,000, which is not a small number, but in comparison to $250,000 fighting it in court, it was a no-brainer. It was a really no-brainer for us. So our goal was to illuminate as many architects and anyone who was willing to listen. So I was hired in 2016 to attack the specifications. And we thought that the best way to get at this was to go after specifiers and say, if you go into the cladding section of the specifications under warranty and add a spec that says, hey, whoever's installing this will be responsible for the water tightness underneath of it. We thought that was the way to go. We thought that that would then push the GCs to procure it as a system, which it should be procured that way anyway. And so we thought that that would really work. There were so many different roadblocks that even if you got the specification in, it would get bullied out on the back end. And we realized the specification was not enough. It just simply wasn't enough. So the more and more we kind of, we just got more and more into it, that we realized that this isn't going to be enough to really be able to mitigate our risk and to absorb it as much as possible. And then whenever we used to bring it to architects, they would always say, wow, this is great, but it's not enough. And we would be like, not enough. Like, you don't have anything. This is better than that, and they would say, well, what about the transitions into the windows? What about the transitions into the roof? What about the, and then that's when we realized, man, we know that stuff, but we need help. If we're going to do that, there's a lot of unknown unknowns, and we're not foolish enough to think that we can dive into that and mitigate the risk. So that's when we realized we needed to engage a building envelope consultant. And we worked with dozens and dozens of them over the years. And when we caught wind that Morrison Hershfield, through Chris Dixon, would be willing to stamp and seal our shop drawings, that's when we realized we found our match, because we knew that, man, if they do that, they would then be skin in the game, on the hook with us. So our idea was, okay, this aligns our interests as well as Morrison Hershfield's interests with the owner. While before, we were almost always on opposite sides of the table. The building envelope consultant wants the gold standard. They want to cover those transitions as much as possible, rightfully so. And then our goal was to do that as financially cost effectively as possible, and to make sure that it would not leak. So it was always a battle back and forth, and it just got, it still is, and I'm sure you all agree, very tiresome. And it was always just bleeding the owner's money, and we were just getting frustrated. So our idea was, if we engage with Morrison Hershfield, we take on the, basically the architect would delegate the design of the exterior envelope to us. We would have Morrison Hershfield underneath the bus. We would roll up our sleeves, look at their design intent, and make it work. They're going to come to that gold standard. We're going to be somewhere here. We're going to meet in the middle, make sure that thing doesn't leak for 10 years. That is the goal. And now we finally all have one goal, and we've aligned our interests with the owner. That was the big key that Chris and I didn't even realize when we first met. Like, whoa, we might have unlocked something that fixes a multitude of problems. And then the other part of it, and that we did not realize, was that the learning that would occur between our two groups. We would be able to learn the unknown unknowns in the building science that, the wealth of knowledge that you building envelope consultants have that we simply don't, being in the trenches. And then you would be able to, as in building envelope consultants, would be able to fill in those blanks of the logistics, the lead time, the later, all those variables that you get most frustrated with, which is an installer who is motivated on site to do the right thing and make sure it doesn't leak. That is what an envelope consultant's dream is. And we thought that this connected us together and really made it work. So I have one more slide and I'm going to hand it over to, this is just a visual representation of it, just kind of the current process, all the wheels kind of just fighting each other and then just kind of making it a little bit more simple. This is not a new precedent. This has been, as Ujval is going to talk about, and Katie as well, this is not a new precedent. This has been happening in MEP, fire protection for a decade more, you know, so we just thought that this was the next logical step. So delivering the building enclosure warranty, again, it would be 10 years, watertight, provided by the installer, EDA. We would be able to, you know, you can read here, I'm not going to read you the slide, but, you know, we would be almost like a management of your warranties for the owner to make sure that if anything goes, and by the 10 years, we would hand it off, facility manager could take it from there. But we would have the ability to mitigate that risk, control it as much as possible, and deliver a good building, a good product, a good asset to the owner. So I've already talked significantly too much. Ujval, I will hand this off to you.
Thank you, Cory. You know, maybe this gives me a chance to jump back to the beginning and reconnect with what we're trying to do as a new paradigm for what we try to proceed with before I talk explicitly about the trust and verification problem. But, you know, owners have real difficulty when things don't go the way they're supposed to and you have internal friction that leads to problems. Owners don't even realize this is occurring often, and the value proposition of the project as a whole goes down with the internal bickering. What we don't need, in my mind, is Pollyannish notions of cooperation and kumbayaism. That isn't the solution. We can't change the behavior of people who are bad actors. What we have to do is we've got to get the incentives aligned so that everybody cooperates for a common outcome. And one of the things that I came across a lot in not only in the industry, but in talking to Chris and to Cory and some of the work that I had done before, is that being able to get these interests aligned, you need not just the technical pieces, you don't need just the designer, you don't need just the contractor, but you need to make sure that it legally aligns and the insurance issues are taken care of and the responsibilities of the parties and the duties of the parties are correctly articulated so that people feel comfortable to make sure they can do what they need to do while trusting the other parties. And so that's really what this is about, is how do we create a warranty, which is not a materials warranty, and we're talking about that in a second, or a manufacturer's warranty, but how do we create a warranty that can create confidence both in the owner and other parties that for 10 years, a single entity will take on the risk-laden building enclosure. And the key thing to realize is that this is not an attempt to do something which let's have a special warranty for something that is minute in terms of the overall risk for the owner. In fact, fire protection, fire engineering, MEP, HVAC, other types of specialty systems that are high risk have for a long time now been essentially carved off as design build activities where the contractor takes the lead, has designers under them or associated with them as a consultant, and is tasked with delivering that scope. So the idea here was that we had to get away from the disaggregated problem of having 10 different subcontractors working on a building enclosure. They all have different incentives, different warranties, and different installation problems because there's no one entity to control it and to take full responsibility. That can't be the GC because the GC is not interested in that. It has to be the building enclosure installer, and they have to be able to control the whole building enclosure because this is an assembly problem. It's not a materials or manufacturer's problem. So we know that the installation is often inadequate or problematic, not even because people don't want or have good intentions to do it correctly. It's just that there are 8 different people working on the same surface. The capacity to be able to control that is very difficult, especially if nobody's answering to anybody. So I'm using the old adage, trust but verify here, but I'm also going to talk about going beyond just trust and verification. So the key part here is that we have to set up a system in which each party has responsibility for what they do and can deliver that responsibility, and finally doesn't attempt to escape that responsibility. So EDA has made the decision that they're going to move to the risk and take the responsibility to produce both the installation at a certain quality, and they have to produce it at a certain quality because they're providing the warranty. They can't escape. If they do shoddy work, they're going to be losing out. On the other hand, the folks that are doing the design, the building enclosure consultants who do the design, have to correctly take responsibility for the designs that they produce, and there they have to stamp. Okay, so one of the key things here is, and this is in this role of the panel here, I'm playing the role of the owner. I want to get the right bang for my buck. I want to be able to control my risk most of all, and the enclosure is a source of great risk. So I got to figure out a way to solve this, and we think that by putting these things together, we can really deliver such an outcome. So the QA and the QC to deliver the performance has to be the key driver for these trust relationships in terms of the owner. You've got to deliver it to me. And you've got to be held responsible so that you take care of the QA QC as a proactive thing to manage your own internal risk. And you can't do that if that party doesn't have this warranty or something that they really have to be responsible for. If they can escape responsibility, none of these systems work. And for many of you on this call, you already understand that the elaborate contractual schemes that are in place in most construction often allows virtually everybody to hide behind some kind of provisions, okay? And in the end, for the owner, the risk management is part of the performance metric because the enclosure is one of the highest risk exposures from claims, okay? Let's see if I can get it to go to the next one here. Okay, you're doing it, excellent, good. So, what we've really got is, for a long time, the construction industry is rife with misaligned interests that are then memorialized in contract documents, which just generate greater sources of confusion and ultimately claims and litigation. People try to solve this. It hasn't been working very, very well. We can't solve that whole problem, but we think we can solve this one problem, which is that the building enclosure, which is the source of such great risk, can be articulated in a manner as fire protection or fire engineering previously was, which is architects will say, that's a big risk area. We don't know what that's really about. Building enclosure consultants, that's their job. And we have to make sure some are good, some are not. We know that, but we want to get to the good ones. And the building enclosure consultant working with the contractor for the whole enclosure then begins to be aligned in their interests. Current warranties don't really work. I mean, yes, everybody likes to offer them, but generally warranties are a marketing activity. The 1-year contractual rectification period, that's small comfort because many of the things that we're talking about in the building enclosure don't appear in a year and appear, years afterwards. What is the owner to do? He can't call in the 1 year. The manufacturer's warranties only cover their own, whatever they've manufactured or the material. And even if you're trying to sell, a larger warranty, they're just upselling for bundles that limit the design and construction options because you have to buy all the products from them, okay? But even then, they don't make everything on the enclosure. So you still don't control it all. You still have problems in various interstitial areas, the way in which transitions take place between what the bundle is of this warranty versus some other product or some sealant or whatever it is. And this is my view. I think manufacturers' warranties that are trapped for the unwary and written for hair trigger vitiation of coverage. What does that mean? Just like what you pointed out, Cory. You put a nail through that surface, you're done. Some examples that Katie might give later on. So this means that everybody's warranties are written by attorneys who spend a lot of time and energy trying to, do things. Let's put it that way. Having been an attorney, I can say that about attorneys. So next. Okay, so there are two pieces. We've got the designer and we've got the builder. So the building envelope scope of work must be separated from the rest of the overall project, and Seattle is already starting to do this as one of those pieces. And then the building envelope design specialist has got to, as Cory said, work in a cooperative way with the contractor from the very beginning and be held responsible for it to the owner. And of course, the architect ultimately will set the performance specifications and the design. I mean, we're not trying to intrude on the aesthetics of the project at all. Right? What we want to do is whatever the aesthetics are and whatever the performance is that's given, we have to figure out how to deliver that. We have to both design it correctly and appropriately and then build it. Okay. And so we have to make sure that the designer is not just, as you said, it's a good description, you know, does the gold standard version and then throws it over the transom to somebody and says, here, you figure out how to do it. You've got to have them tied together. And then ultimately, the designer has to take responsibility. Far too much of the activity this is my view, people can argue with me about this, far too much when you get into the world of building enclosure consultants, they want to say that they're experts, but they don't want to take responsibility for it. And that is a problem in my mind, because then the value proposition for the owner is empty. Like you already had one person design it and do it, then you hire a building envelope consultant guy who comes on and says, do this, do that, whatever, but they don't take responsibility for it. If you say you know more than the average bear, then that means back it up and take responsibility for it. I know it's easy to flee the responsibility and sort of it's just a great way, like I make, you know, I turn the crank on my billable hours and in the end I can just say I'm only responsible for 50,000 bucks or whatever my insurance covers, I'm done. I'll be mean about this for a second because people know that I'm a mean guy, but that, you know, I see that as cowardly. And certainly lawyers and others work to do this kind of activity where you say my responsibility is completely curtailed, but it's your job to pay me a bunch of money as an expert. I'm confused. You're supposed to know more than me, therefore it's easy for you to take the responsibility. Right? That's the whole deal. That's why I'm hiring you. Okay, so next. I'm certainly not going to let the contractors get away either. So don't think of this as a one-way street, right? I mean, there are plenty of contractors who are, you know, as I often say, corruption is a feature of the construction industry, not a bug of the construction industry. And there's enough of that to go around everywhere. So what we have to make sure is we find the right contractor who will actually take responsibility for this. And what that means is they have to take responsibility internally to manage their QA/QC of their workforce and be driven to improve that workforce by interacting with the designer and raising their own bar of installation and oversight so they can be delivered properly to ultimately reduce their risk for the, you know, that anybody calls on their 10-year warranty. They have to have, you know, skin in the game, as they say. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is that we've had this conversation with some people and they always, you know, freak out. Oh my God, we can't do this. You know, the legal stuff will be too complex, or the warranties are too crazy, or whatever. It's like, no, they're not. All of this can be done. It's a question of, are you committed to getting it done? And I'm not sure if this is a slide, but I say in the next slide maybe that if any of you are doing IPD or IPD Light, that is much more complicated and bizarre. Anybody who's doing triple P, that is bizarre contractual weirdness compared to what we're talking about. We can show you how to do what we need to do already, okay? Next. I think it's one last one, right? So you've got to cooperate, no gold plating, as I said, or convenient ignorance on either side. It's like you purposely don't want to know what the other side needs so you can protect yourself. Truly sharing the risk, and we talk about this as a warranty situation, but it's really a stamp and warranty situation. The designer piece has to stamp it, and then the contractor has to provide the 10-year warranty. What I really like about this is each party has to, as Cory says, truly learn from each other. the contractor has to really sit down and say, look, those guys are telling me, yeah, I want to use this cheaper material, but that cheaper material isn't going to work to make sure that this lasts for 10 years. So you've got to make that change. Now, in the construction industry, and especially the way the contracts are written, everybody is just covering their ass, as they say, excuse the language, but COA all the time. And it's important for us to get past that. You're not going to solve these types of high risk situations by simply doing that kind of activity, right? One more. I think it's only one more slide, Cory. Go back. This is Katie. So, so I just wanted to make sure everybody had a sense of why we were trying to do this. There is a real problem in the building enclosure, and Katie will tell you, and she's been involved in many of this, pieces of litigation. For an owner, the value of the building is all, and putting up the building it is part and parcel of reducing his overall risk for potential claims downstream. And by setting up a warranty like this on the building enclosure, the whole enclosure, the scope of that envelope, as it were, and making sure that the entity that is going to be responsible for it has such a warranty and will be on the risk, protects him. As an owner, I don't know how I would want to do it any other way. If I know that my biggest risk is there's going to be a rocket attack, I want to find a way to protect against the rocket attack. Moisture is very much like a rocket attack in some ways. You can't escape it. It will get to you somewhere or another. So an arch example, but you're looking to manage risk. So let's go to Katie, who manages risk for a living, being an attorney. So I'll throw it to you, Katie, to give us a few last words and some more context.
Yeah, and I think I have the honor of only having one slide and being the shortest speaker, which everyone loves with their attorney. We've been working on, what the warranty would look like. And there, the short answer is every warranty is going to look different because every project is different. Every risk profile is different. And so but there's some common things I think that we would see as we work out the legalities of this. And some of the issues I think that the warranty would address that you don't see right now is that your typical warranty, we kind of call them gotcha warranties because, Ujval alluded to this earlier, but they're designed, and I know because I write them, but they're designed to basically be impossible to claim on. And so when you make a warranty claim, and again, this is my opinion, it might be a little cynical, but it really comes down to whether the entity against whom you're making the warranty claim thinks it's the most cost-effective way to solve the problem that you're presenting. And if it's not, they will find a reason to deny the warranty claim and push it into another forum, whether that be litigation or arbitration or just walking away. And so this warranty is really written in a way where, we don't care if you've necessarily followed to the T every manufacturer's process and, you didn't do this on day 37, and so we're denying the warranty, or you didn't give me notice within 10 days of first discovering the defect, and so we're going to deny it. And it's what I would call more an inclusive warranty. So it includes everything, but then excludes certain specific issues that may come up. So for example, one of the issues that we've talked about is structural probably wouldn't be covered if the damage was caused by a structural issue and things like that. So the first way legally the warranty would look like is a warranty of inclusion rather than a warranty of exclusion. Another issue that this warranty would address is the time on risk. So a lot of times you'll get various warranties from various product manufacturers or even service warranties from contractors, and they're all different time periods. And so somebody really in your organization at some point, you being the owner, of course, in this situation, but they're going to have all these warranties and understand all the notice provisions and how long they go and whether or not the time periods meet up eventually. And so what this warranty does is it says, look, we're going to give you 10 years, or if it's extended 15 years or 20 years. and we're managing all of those warranties for you. So the time on risk is uniform, and you can move forward kind of calmly with a giant exhale instead of having to manage all of the time on risk. Another issue that I think that this warranty would solve from a legal perspective is the transferability of the warranty. So if you have, for example, a developer that enters into a number of warranties as the party at risk at that point in time when the warranty is entered into, a lot of times those warranties legally are not transferable. And so when the building is eventually transferred over to the ultimate owner, which is a different legal entity, a lot of times those warranties are voided or not good at that point. And so this warranty, the building enclosure warranty, would cover all of those issues and make all of the warranties transferable through a comprehensive risk management platform. And so those are the types of kind of legal issues that we've been looking at. And like I said, every warranty would be bespoke, and we'd, work through a lot of those issues. But ultimately, it should give an owner great peace of mind that there's one party that's on the risk. They make the claim, and you don't have what you would typically see is just a lot of finger pointing back and forth. It's the design, no, it's the material, no, it's the installation. And because all those have been merged and all of those parties are now aligned in their risk management profile, it eliminates what potentially and often is years and years and years of litigation. And so ultimately it should solve a lot of problems, except maybe my job security, but we'll tackle that later on.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Katie, what you mentioned, which is that, things like the transferability end up, they're really traps for the unwary, because the owner is absolutely concerned with that problem, but the designer or the manufacturer is not. They're just, whatever the warranty says, fine. We have to be very careful to make sure that the warranties that are involved not only align in time, but also align in these fundamental other issues, which could make the deal or the value of the building itself and put the value at question. I mean, people don't realize that this is the non-transferability is sort of like, you get some improvement on your house done and you say, well, okay, the next person who owns my house can't actually use that improvement. That value is gone. And especially in the real estate context, this is a very important thing to be able to clarify in the developer context. So I think
and I'll second that. So when I usually see them, everything's gone horribly wrong. So, I'll say it with that caveat, but a lot of times too, the problems are multifaceted. And so it's not as if you go in and you're doing your forensic analysis of the building after you've had water infiltration and everyone sits down and says, yep, that was the problem. The waterproofing membrane was, had pinholes in it, and everyone walks away. It doesn't work that way. And so, exactly. And so, you'll often see that it's a combination of 2 or 3 issues that come together that create the defect that leads to the damage. And so you legitimately have finger pointing back and forth. And at some point you've got to allocate the responsibility. And so what this warranty does is just eliminate the need to do that up front, and the parties can deal with that behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so, I mean, to me, the value of it is it has import for the real estate, for the owner, for the real asset value, the reason the asset exists, minimizing the risk of that, down to making sure that the designers and the contractors are fully incentivized to deliver the product according to the terms that are sort of really valued by the people who own the asset. Right now, we have the pieces of the project are valued for making money off of the owner who has the asset, as opposed to delivering value for the asset. And that creates a real dilemma. So I know it's 8:30, and what we want to do is, and I think we can say comfortably that we could talk hours about this, because we spent many, many hours thinking about this. But we really value that our chance here to get feedback from the people who are wrestling with it, and to be able to answer questions, to take questions. And I always feel like when we talk about this set of issues, everybody has their own little questions about it because they're at the center of something. They've seen something. They remember something went this way. And so they're anxious to ask, well, what would happen if? I'm not sure that we can answer every possible hypothetical that you're going to bring up, but we're very anxious to be able to talk in more detail. And every time we do this, we learn ourselves about what goes forward. But I think the great thing that Katie, that you've pointed out is that we're ready to do this. There isn't anything that would really be impeding it from going forward. It's just a question of owners and the right building enclosure consultants and the right contractors coming together to be able to deliver it. Okay. Do you want to take control, Nathan? And is anybody willing to ask a question, or have we bludgeoned them into silence?
We've had a couple of them come in. Go ahead, Nathan. I'll let you take over.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. So the first question is, how will maintenance be addressed? So I guess if you're worried about deferred maintenance, you're worried about.
Yeah, I mean, Katie addressed this in like an overarching explanation, but it would be, I know I hate to oversimplify it, but that's kind of what I do, which is just, EDA would be engaged immediately. If there's a call, we would have to come out there, provide the maintenance, basically bring the building back to water tightness. That is.
I think he's talking about ongoing maintenance as well. So if you're managing the warranty, right, let's say, you in your scope was, the whole enclosure, and you had 8 different or 10 different or 20 different warranties that you had under you that you had to manage that required you to do X, Y, and Z on a particular time. You're managing that for the owner. You're managing that for the facilities guy so that they know what's happening, because what you're doing is you want to prevent that from becoming a problem so that somebody makes a claim on your warranty. And the owner and the facilities manager just wants to take it off the table, or as I don't know who was mentioning, maybe it was Chris, there's just a drawer in some room with all this paper. Nobody knows, is this a 10-year warranty, 5-year warranty, 7-year warranty? Does it, do I have a 30-day notice? Do I have 10? They don't know about that. So one of the things that obviously that Cory and EDA will have to do is to be able to help manage that and make sure that that's really taken care of on each project. And I think Katie's right about this, depending on the scope. That's why we have to be careful. We don't want to just say, here's a 2-page warranty and this will do it. Make sense?
Sounds great.
Right.
Cliff also asked, what if a BE contractor goes out of business prior to the expiration of the warranty period?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. When you, to be perfectly blunt, when you contract with any entity, you bear the risk that that entity is going to go out of business. What I will say is that the idea behind these warranties is that they will be backed by, a bond or an insurance policy. And so in most jurisdictions, you can still bring a claim against an entity that's gone out of business, often for 5 or more years after that entity has gone out of business. And so if the warranty is backed by, I'll call it a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you still would have an ability to execute on the warranty. Now, it's not going to look the same. You can't make a call and they're not going to come out and just fix the problem because they're out of business. But with that said, like when you contract with any entity, you vet them and you see how long they've been in business and, all of that. And so, but I think in most instances, you would have, very established contractors doing this, as well as some financial backing to the warranty that would provide a second layer of security.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, we know that that's a concern. We have to make sure that we address that. There are multiple ways to do it, either through these bonding and insurance techniques, self-insurance techniques, captive insurance entities. That there are other ways to do this. But it's a very good question. And frankly, as the 4 of us know, it's a question we always get. So we've answered that one many, many times before. Go ahead.
Great. So the next question comes from Tina Ray, who asks, Does this affect the cost of project insurance during the design and build phase? It seems that an insurance policy on this type of contract would be more expensive.
Well, can I just jump in there? Katie, you should answer this, of course. But one of the things is people always seem to assume that if it's not standard, it's going to cost more. You might want to entertain the idea that an insurer would say, holy smokes, you're going to have somebody else take on the warranty for moisture penetration in my enclosure, which is a significant risk on every project I have. Maybe I should give you a break if you do it this way. All right, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's a question that doesn't really have an answer. I think Ujval hit the nail on the head when he said that we'd have to, you know, obviously whatever insurance company is backing it, and there likely would be multiple insurance companies backing it because it would trigger different types of liability, but that they would have to do their own risk assessment. You know, I equate it kind of, if anyone's familiar with OSIPs or CSIPs, which is a similar concept where you have an owner or a GC that is bringing all the subcontractors within the same insurance program. And the idea is, look, we're going to save money overall because we have unified risk management. We're all on the same page. We're all working towards a common goal, and we're not pointing the fingers, you know, towards each other. And so those programs overall tend to have an insurance savings because of the unified risk management strategy across the entire scope of the project. And so I think ideally that's a question that has yet to be answered, but you know, ultimately I think everyone would be hoping that it would actually result in a reduction.
Great. Another question from Darren Smith. What do spot checks, site visits look like in the program through install as well as checks throughout the life of the warranty? Does the warranty program address items outside of water penetration, i.e. structure? And just to tag on to that, Bill Thorderson asks, would there be some sort of inspection of the final installation? I think those probably go together.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Chris, go for it, God.
One of the big benefits in having a design build entity address both the design and the installation is that you don't have a litany of testing requirements in the documents that you often see, because this is not an adversarial relationship. You know, the building consultant, building envelope consultant, and the building envelope contractor are working together to deliver on this entire enclosure in a way that they share risk to the point that you are not seeing a lot of unnecessary testing. And it's not a situation that requires that, right? Because we're going to be working to inspect the way we need to inspect and test the way we need to test to make sure that we're delivering on that 10-year enclosure warranty that we're promising. And because we're working together as a team on that design and that installation, we don't need to go overboard with some of the testing that occurs on most buildings today. I think that answers the testing and inspection question. Would there be a final inspection and a final installation? For regulatory or code requirement, yes. If there's something in the building code that triggers that final inspection, that final test, absolutely, because that's a piece of paper that ultimately we have to have to deliver on the project. But for purposes of just testing to test, no. And the expertise that's built into that design build partnership or relationship to deliver on this is really what the team is going to be relying on. And ultimately, it's that design build team that has to bear the responsibility if they didn't test enough or if they got something wrong. That's covered, right? It doesn't really matter that you've tested a window 10 times. If it leaks, it's going to be replaced under the conditions of that warranty.
Exactly.
And you wanted to say, and I think you said this earlier, but the scope of the warranty is really about water and certain types of thermal issues and performance issues. It won't be about the structure. Now, that's basically because, well, two things. It could be about structure if you want to do that, and if the building enclosure consultant felt comfortable and had structural engineering people on staff and wanted to go to that degree, that's fine. Or it may be that the building enclosures in a particular building type where really the structure and the enclosure are very closely the same thing, will have to be designed together or whatever. It's a tilt-up project or something, whatever it is. So it could be, and this is why Katie indicates that there isn't a way to just create, here it is, the 2-page document, and we'll send it to you, and then that's the end of it. Because the real value of the warranty is that it is able to be articulated for the scope that is for the project and is the risk. You've got to manage that risk profile. You can't just have a 2-page warranty that opens you up to all kinds of other things. Right?
Yeah, and as Katie mentioned earlier, one of the exclusions that you might see in a warranty of this type could be, or probably would be, structural as it relates to supporting the building, holding the building up. But as Ujjwal points out, there isn't any reason that we couldn't incorporate a secondary structural component to this warranty. Morrison Hershfield has that in-house capability. We do that routinely for clients right now. We offer that engineering service for secondary structure. There isn't any reason why with the right building envelope consultant, you couldn't fold that into the scope that's being provided under that warranty as well. But if the building were to settle because the structural engineer failed to design the footing correctly for a column, and that had an impact on the enclosure, that would probably be an exclusion in the warranty for what we're talking about, which is the enclosure of the building and not what's holding the building up.
Yeah, at a very fundamental level, both legally and ethically and risk-wise, you can only be held responsible for what it is that you do. You don't want to be in a situation where people are opportunistically attempting to force you to be responsible for stuff that you would have no control over. Now you're stepping over into other areas. And so we want to make sure that we are moving to the risk. We understand what the risk is, what that scope of the risk is, and that's what that warranty is about. It isn't an attempt to, sometimes Chris and I have spoken or others have spoken where, in specification, you have a specifier who has a blank for the amount of years that they want a warranty covered, and they just make up numbers to make it look like they're helping the owner, right? Oh, well, last time I said 5-year warranty, why don't I ask for a 10-year warranty? I'll make that in a specification.
Dartboard.
Right, and sure, they might give it to you, but it'll cost the owner more or change the nature of the risk profile, and that gets lost. We have to be very proactive in thinking about this issue because it's the same thing as you would have in fire protection or fire engineering, right? Those guys are very clear about what their scopes are because they have significant risk in their scopes. And you can't act opportunistically to try to make them cover risks that should be somebody else's.
Sure. I had a question. Is there a building type or perhaps an owner or developer that you see an inroad for this type of project? Like, is it condominiums? Is it universities? Is it skyscrapers? Like, what's the...
I think everyone could in theory answer that question, but I'll be very brief in the sense that, we weren't really sure exactly who would be the prime target to be able to pull this off. But originally we always thought institutional because they're looking for 50, 75-year, 100-year buildings. They're the ones who are willing to leap into this concept, but you just don't know. It's one of those things that a developer who's trying to move the building very quickly, they are another good example because they are very agile. Like you have an institutional owner, they have levels of bureaucracy they have to get through to be able to pull off a contract like this. That's a tall order. Unless you get the person at the top of the ladder, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to adopt this building delivery method. While a developer, they're very agile. Ujjwal, you probably ought to explain.
Well, I think from the owner's perspective, and here we'll remain slightly cynical about all parties, about owners as well. Okay, so it's not like owners are especially. Every owner thinks they're sophisticated because they sign a check, right? But that doesn't mean that they're really sophisticated. Just as every designer thinks they're sophisticated because they have a stamp, or contractor thinks they're sophisticated because they're worth $1 billion or whatever it is. What you really need here is you've got to have the right decision maker. Really, it doesn't matter the building type. As long as the enclosure poses a significant risk to the overall performance of your building, you should be a good target for this because you're shedding that risk and delivering performance. That's what you should be about. So any building type where the enclosure is both complex and of risk, of high risk type, should be interested. But it requires, we've talked about this to a lot of owners, to a lot of other types of people, and we'll say we get partly what Cory's talking about, which is, oh yes, you're a whole bunch of empty suits who think you're really, whatever, sophisticated or whatever, and you describe it to them, and they ask questions that just don't make any sense, because the questions are about, how do I sell this to my guy upstairs that will make me look good? Like, wait, I'm just telling you how this works. This is this. No, they're concerned about how they look good to someplace else. So I would say the first thing is, it may not be very, very large institutions, because being able to convince very large institutions to do this depends on their capacity to have some special person get convinced. We'd like this to cascade more generally. We think that the idea is what makes sense. It doesn't matter what that particular type is. Yeah, it may be multifamily jumps on board for a certain reason because of the nature of the risks involved, or the problems that they have. Frankly, I would say hospitals should be in on this big time. Right? They've got vulnerable populations. Penetration and creation of mold, moisture, other kinds of things should be a big issue for every hospital group that's out there.
Yep.
Medical office building, right? But the real question then is, who's going to examine it from first principles and understand what's going on, as opposed to, we always did it this way, so too bad, right? And I know that Katie has a hard stop in about 3 minutes, so I want to make sure if she wants to jump in, she can.
Oh, you're handling it pretty well yourself, Ujjwal, so I'll let you keep
Well,
going.
then maybe any last few words before we answer. We're going to stay. The rest of us will be here, and we're happy to answer questions for as long as you'd like, in whatever detail that you want to ask and whatever detail we can muster. So go ahead, Katie. Last few words before you have to take off.
Yeah, I think it's a new concept, but it's not very far off concepts that I think we've alluded to earlier that are working. And from a legal perspective, I think it's highly doable, and it would be really exciting to start implementing.
Excellent. All right. So we'll let you go and take care of your other obligations and duties.
Yeah.
The rest.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks everyone for letting me join tonight. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you,
all.
Katie.
Thank
So
you,
great for you to
Katie.
be here.
Great to see you. Have a good one.
Nathan, how long do we actually have for the meeting? Are we? I'm not sure that there was a.
15 more minutes.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, we usually
happy to-
go till 7.
Okay. Happy to
I
take
see,
as many
I
questions.
see there's
as you'd
another
like.
there's another question.
Yeah.
A couple of questions.
Lay them at us, Nathan. Let's hit them.
So Cliff, I guess more of a statement, said the bonding requirements of public entities serve to provide a limited guarantee of this nature. This was when we were discussing entities going out of business. In some states, a waterproof bond is required. And then he asks, could this work with an entity that is both the BE consultant and the end installer?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah, of course, of course. I
that-
feel like you're trying to steal our thunder right now,
Yeah.
Cliff. But yes, that
Yeah.
could work.
I mean, that's what you had in fire protection, right? They have their own teams of fire protection engineers. They deliver it as design build. It's their set of drawings. They stamp them. They're responsible, and obviously in terms of overall, and here we're only speaking about economic efficiency, but in terms of overall economic efficiency in the marketplace, a building enclosure consulting entity that married with the right contractor who did this type of installation, that would be the fastest and easiest way to decrease overall transaction costs for the delivery, both to the industry and to the owner. But it, and on the other side, it could be a building envelope contractor who then says, hey, look, why are we fooling around? Why don't we just, for $100 million, buy this top building enclosure consulting outfit, and we're merged together to do it. So the underlying market economics are a different problem as to how to proceed, but certainly makes sense that they would merge together to deliver it.
Thank you. Let's see. Darren asked, says, I agree with every owner can benefit, but what does their extra hard cost look like? how's it going to be monetized over the X amount of years? I guess, what's the payback over warranty period?
I can take this, but I'm sure Chris can elaborate in the sense that what are the hard costs and what is the extra? I would argue this would cost significantly less than the current system that is in place to the owner. I don't know if that answers it exactly. I just know that with all the pre-con designing, all those hours that the owner is just forking out money hourly to the enclosure consultants, all these different design assistants, that is gone. That is gone. You know, and on the back end, all of the life cycle costs of having to fight someone to come out is gone. You know, that it's been, I'm not trying to like be over dramatic, but it's just the truth. You know, it's one throat to choke. If anything goes wrong, there is one person you have to choke, and that changes everything. You know what I mean? Like if you send a lawyer, you don't have to bring in 15 different parties, and they all have very good ground of saying, this is not my fault. That's the problem with this. That's how we got into this in the first place, is that it's one thing to have a blame game and one side of the table is just wrong, but they're holding their ground. It's another thing with the rain screens and stuff like that, that everyone has a good solid ground to stand on. And that's why these arguments get so elongated and expensive. And so I would argue that the owner, this would cost significantly less project delivery costs. And I would challenge anyone who would go against that. But Chris, please fill in the blanks.
I mean, I agree. I mean, we've had many discussions about this, and EDA has had actual experience with this, and what is involved when there's a leak and you bring multiple parties to the table to argue whose fault it is. It ends up being a $300,000, you know, for the EDA. That's just their costs, right? There's still tens of thousands, if not more, on all of the other parties' costs as well, including the owner, to solve the problem that EDA could have solved under this warranty for $30,000, right? Without involving any other entities. And this is for, you know, and we're proposing 10 years. This is what EDA started with. But as Katie mentioned, there isn't any reason that this couldn't be negotiated for 15 years or 20 years. It's all a matter of negotiating what it's going to be, how that risk is going to manifest itself, you know, and there will be additional costs for a company like EDA to assume something beyond 10 years. But we have always looked at this as being a cost savings, both initially for design and installation, as well as long-term.
And it's appropriate design and installation. That's the key thing, is you're optimizing what needs to be done for the benefit of the owner, as well as optimizing to avoid risk. And therefore you either over-design or underbuild, or, you know, worry about all kinds of other activities. I'll just give it as an example. And this, here I'm speaking purely from an economic standpoint, but if anybody knows of an entity who is an owner who's now saying, hey, you know, that fire protection, fire engineering stuff, that's all done in this other way. Why don't I break that apart? Why don't I stop making it design build? Why don't I find an architect who's going to take responsibility for that and then find a separate contractor? Everybody realizes this is a very bad outcome, because the reason those things have come together is there's significant risk. And when you have a location of significant risk, you have to have the level of cooperation guided to the correct incentive. The higher the risk, the more you want that coordinated and evacuate transaction costs, especially of information. That's what you're really dealing with here. You've got to get the design and that information over to the contractor, who has to get certain information going back and forth to deliver it for you. And to the degree that you disaggregate the information streams and create really false transaction costs to protect against these risks, you make it economically less feasible. The hard cost, I would say, actually, hey, plenty of owners are willing to pay premiums for all kinds of stuff. The most important thing they're willing to pay a premium for is if you reduce my risk significantly and you can deliver the project more effectively with better performance. And when you do it this way, you can actually prove that. This isn't a vaporous performance claim, right? This isn't, you know, puppies will live longer in my building. right?
But-
That's not the kind of claim this is, right?
Right. And I mean, perhaps one of the biggest things to look at in terms of cost, overall cost to an owner is for a private owner is transferability, which we talked about. I mean, it's really hard to put a price on that. But if an owner, a developer is building a building and they intend to sell this building after 5 years or 3 years or 1 year, and they can transfer this to another owner, that's huge. You know, it's really difficult to even put a price tag on it because you don't have that right now, right? As Katie alluded to, you know, many of those warranties are void the minute that that building is sold to another owner. So for certain owners, the price tag is like it's immeasurable, right? For the ability to be able to do something like that is pretty key.
Great, thanks. Bill asks, some products offer 20 and 30-year warranties. How would that marry with the BE warranty? And I think you could kind of go the other way with that. You know, if you have a urethane deck coating has a 5-year warranty. So does that fall into maintenance or what? How do those things play together?
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. So let's just say that it's the 10-year warranty that's being provided by EDA. All of the other material and system warranties that are concurrent in that 10-year period, EDA would offer a service to maintain those warranties. And then at the end of their 10-year warranty, if it's not extended, they would hand over all of those other warranties in good shape. So all of the notices have been handled through EDA during that concurrent period of time. For a warranty that's only 5 years, EDA is going to pick up another 5 years beyond what that traffic coating manufacturer offers is only a 5-year warranty because they've got the entire enclosure, right? So EDA, in consultation with their BE consultant, Morrison Hirschfield, for that scenario, you know, we're going to make sure that we specify and install the traffic coating that we know is going to go for 10 years if that's the 10-year warranty. We also know it's going to go beyond 10 years. I want to make it clear that, you know, we're not expecting the building to collapse in 10 years. Where the idea here isn't that we only do what's just going to make us past that 10-year finish line and all things going to leak. That's not the case at all. But you know that if we've got systems that we can warrant for 10 years and feel very comfortable doing that, it's going to go much further than 10 years when we hand that back over to the owner.
And you also realize that problems in VE and other types of activities that owners hate and all the parties hate, you can cut those off at the pass because you're optimizing to make sure that the 10-year at least minimum warranty and what you're talking about, it's going to be more if you design it correctly. You're not going to have that fighting between the two parties where the contractor says, wait, that costs too much, or I only bid this, or you don't have those battles. And of course here, if you've only got a 5-year warranty, then clearly Cory's got to do it for the 10 if they give you the 10-year warranty, right? Because and that means that they have to realize, wait a minute, we better make sure that piece is designed correctly. And we may have to pay a little bit more. We may have to use a different kind of fastener here than we wanted to. It could have been a little cheaper with that other fastener, but let's just make sure we can get it covered. That means that both sides are proactively managing the risk for the owner by making sure their design and their construction, installation, and the quality of that installation is continuous, which you don't have now. It's completely fragmented. That's what you're really suffering from, right? In chemistry, it's called, well, it doesn't matter, but it's like, it's called a limiting reagent. So in a reaction, this could be, you could have all of this, but you only need this tiny bit of catalyst. If you don't have the correct catalyst, the whole reaction won't go. And that's what you've got in construction, right? The one guy who shows up on Tuesday and has a hangover who, you know, blows through the membrane 6 times, that's it. Doesn't matter what everybody else has done. So that's what has to be controlled.
Cool. Samuel LaRoche asks, for a fire protection engineer, the exact requirements for compliance are very clear, laid out by the code. Are the requirements for the envelope as clear as those for fire? Or are the requirements more related to the owner's project requirements that can be subjective, such that it may be difficult to know exactly what the engineer's stamp is for? Do you feel like there's enough of a framework in place to give a BE engineer, architect the security they need with their stamp?
It's a really good question, and it brings up
First
something that
question.
we haven't touched on yet, which is that in any design build scenario, whether it's HVAC or fire protection, or in this case, building enclosure, there has to be performance criteria that's developed and given to that design build entity to design to. So the code requirements are, as the questioner rightly points out, that's fixed. So yes, there are many things in the building code that require things of the building envelope across multiple chapters in the building code. That's a given that if we are stamping as the BE consultant, we have to satisfy all of those code requirements as a given. Beyond that, though, there has to be an exercise involved with the owner to establish performance requirements. And what we're proposing is a document that goes along with this compendium of documents that we've been working on. That's a performance requirements document that is similar to what you would expect to see from a fire protection engineer specification or an HVAC specification, where the owner's intending to delegate that design build scope to an entity, but you can't really effectively do that without first establishing and providing the performance requirements whereby that design build entity has to design to. So yes, there has to be some additional expertise and additional document that's produced by the owner in order for that to happen. It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And I would just say that in codes in general, I'm not convinced that the fire protection stuff is much more precise than lots of other things. There's codes and the way they're developed and the ambiguities in codes and the continuous development of new products and new installation schemes always create a problem for these things. And so what Chris is talking about is that we need to affirmatively set out what it is that we think the performance should be. And of course, the minimum is what has to be in code. They have to do that. I mean, Cory can't ask Chris to stamp something that is not within the purview of his professional duty to fulfill code.
Yeah.
That's just, that doesn't pass muster in any regime.
Is there other performance testing in the warranty? You know, we do air barrier tests at the end of construction. Are you warranting that the air barrier will continue to perform, or that the energy functions of the envelope will continue to perform? Like, is that the kind of benchmarking that we have, or is it just it doesn't leak?
Well, I would say, you know, for the whole building air leakage testing in our area, that's a code requirement. So we would have to design that building to satisfy that requirement and deliver on that in installation. For something like an energy performance, yes, the code says, let's just say that we know that we have a U value requirement of some portion of the envelope. You know, we're going to use our expertise to be able to make sure that we design that so that that U value, yeah, is going to perform in that way for the duration of the warranty, for the life of the building. Really, that I don't think is so much a warranty issue. It is, if you design it right the first time, that doesn't really change, right? The U value shouldn't be diminishing, you know, in the curtain walls or the opaque, you know, clad wall, you know, if you get it right the first time. But to your point, that performance criteria has to be correctly established. And then we need to be able to know what that is to be able to design something to that, right? That's the real trick, I think.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that there's certain things that just really nobody will warrant. And so you don't want to imagine that this can just keep growing and growing and growing to the point where, you know, it's what's called the builder's risk coverage. It's like anything that goes wrong is, you know, somehow part of that scenario and failure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to ask these types of questions, because then you understand what that scope is supposed to be, and you get used to the idea that that scope is going to be articulated in this way, right? I mean, if you can do a design build project, which is, you know, $4.3 billion, yeah, well, you can carve it up to make the rest of this work.
All right.
I'd like to answer, Nathan, I'd like to answer the one question from Bill. Where you buy stock in this? You buy GameStop and you short those hedge funds. Let's get them.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm happy to take your check and I'll invest it for you.
Yeah.
Just send it to my address and I'll make sure that you You're
There you
invested.
go. There you
Chris
go.
is acting as Robin Hood reverse here, but that's a whole different thing. We don't want to go into that, where Robin Hood is actually a front for Citadel, if any
Yeah.
of you know what Citadel is. So
Yeah.
anyway, so real
This has
problem.
been terrific. Nathan, sorry, you close. I will
Yeah.
hush.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, we're at the end. We had a couple more questions, but I'd like to just wrap up. Thank you guys so much for putting together this presentation and the panel discussion. Thanks to the audience for asking questions and participating. It's always best when we get good questions and keep it all lively. But yeah, thanks to our presenters.
Did you present, I mean, when you had the initial slide, you had our contact info on that slide and stuff? I don't remember if we did or not.
Yeah, yeah. that was
I'm
on there.
sure, Nathan, if anybody wants to get in touch with us, contact us. You know,
We will talk all day about this. You can either connect us through LinkedIn, not Chris, because he doesn't believe in social media, but we are available. We will talk your ear off if you're willing to listen.
Great.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much for having us.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
this is great.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
we look
night.
forward
Thank
to being in Seattle next time around.
Yeah,
Yeah, sometime soon.
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thanks again,
Thank
guys.
you guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, Penny.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Nice meeting you.
thanks,
Thank you,
Penny and
guys.
Nathan,
Bye.
for your guys' hard work. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys. You did a great job.